Welcome to my channel. My name is Simon Hill. Hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment, share this video, and let's get to it. Today I'm going to be reacting to this article from NYT about younger or mid-millennials who are not saving for the future. It's very relevant for me because as a person who's 31, I'm in this age range, and my financial future is something I think about all the time. So let's get into it. It's titled "The World's a Mess, so they've stopped saving for tomorrow." Many adults under 35 are throwing financial caution to the wind. It's all about saving less, spending more, and pursuing passions. In this picture, we see Julia Wagner, a financial analyst, has decided to pursue an expensive hobby, coral farming. He has 7 tanks at home in Arizona. Picture by Ash Ponders for the New York Times. This article is written by Anna B. Kampahati. I'm butchering these names. Sorry, Anna. Anyway, this is published on May 13th, 2022. In a tumultuous time, many adults under 35 have stopped playing it safe. Instead of banking as much of their pay as they used to, they're saving less, spending more, and pursuing passion projects or risky careers. I decided to read this article exactly because of this first paragraph. I mean, this sums it up almost completely for me. I mean, my savings are somewhat minimal. Most of my savings are tied up in investments, high risk investments actually, and I need to be more prudent with how I spend. Nimarta Narang, 27, said she was prudent about almost everything until the end of last year, when she had an epiphany. I don't want to spend my life being so careful and cautious. For most of the coronavirus pandemic, she couldn't travel to Bangkok to see her family. When she finally made the visit, she was struck by how much she had missed. Her mother's 50th birthday, her grandmother's funeral, her sister's engagement, her father's beard going gray. Sounds like the pandemic really worked something on her family. Sorry that all that happened to you. Coming back to the U.S., I realized I needed to do things differently, said Miss Narang, a literary editor at Brown Girl magazine. Scroll down. One thing she had always wanted to do was to live in New York. This was me as well. Growing up as a kid in small Monroe, Louisiana, my dream from a very young age was to move to New York. And I think a lot of people in my generation, at least, because this was before the internet became such a big thing, we thought that the internet or that New York was the place that you needed to be to get things done, to be successful, to be in a very interesting, fun, exciting place. And, you know, many small town kids who didn't fit in their small town dreamed of going to New York. But New York is prohibitively expensive. She packed up everything in her Los Angeles apartment and made the move in March. She also took a new approach to her finances. Before the pandemic, she said she was putting about $2,000 into her savings account each month. That's quite a bit of money. That's quite a bit. Now it's half that amount. The rest goes toward a costlier apartment, $600 more in monthly rent, evenings out with friends, and small indulgences she would have denied herself before. You know, as for me and how my saving strategy, generally I just put in whatever's left over when when my next salary or paycheck hits. Whatever's left over, most of that goes into investments or into generally not a savings account, because I would rather my money try to grow than rather just sit in an account. But it's nothing very speculative. Nothing out of the ordinary. Just, you know, put it in a stock, put it in an ETF, buy some Bitcoin. That's my saving strategy. And definitely, if I made enough money to save $2,000 a month, I would have a lot more invested, saved. But I shall continue. I wanted to use my savings to have a life experience, she said. Visiting home made me see how much life I had missed. She's not alone. A recent study by Fidelity Investments found that 45% of people aged 18 to 35 don't see a point in saving until things return to normal. In that same age group, 55% said they had put retirement planning on hold. Yeah, I could say I'm exactly in this group, and it feels like since 2008 or 9, nothing has ever really been normal. You know, like when I was growing up, it felt like the world was very possible for us. It was very possible for us to achieve things in this world. And, you know, when we saw the financial crash, I saw my parents like almost lose their house. I saw many people in the country lose their houses, the unemployment. Then we've had 4 years of Trump. Then we had a pandemic on top of that. It's like my generation keeps getting beat up by these circumstances, and it never felt like we had a chance to really save money or get our pennies up. I mean, the most I've ever had saved at one time was 5K. Facts. 5K was the most I've ever had saved up. And that eventually got blown when I flew across seas and started traveling and stuff. Anyway, for some, like Miss Narang, the isolation of pandemic life triggered the decision to enjoy the moment, financial consequences be damned. For others, the motivation has come from worries over climate change, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, domestic political instability, soaring inflation, through-the-roof housing costs, and a topsy-turvy stock market. I know I just said earlier that my generation has been going through mad trauma, but I mean, every generation has had trauma, right? I mean, the people before millennials, Gen X, I mean, what did they go through? The Cold War, nuclear war every day, that threat. I mean, people have had troubles and struggles in every generation. So, New York at last. This is Nimarta Narang, who left Los Angeles for her dream city, and she is socking away significantly less of her earnings these days. Right? Looks like she's living her best life. Hannah Jones, a stand-up comic in Denver, said she used to save almost all of her discretionary income. She was a thrift shop regular who refused to pay for a Netflix subscription. Wow. Now she has become what she calls a financial nihilist, meaning she puts significantly less into her savings account. The shaky state of the world was on her mind. I'm not going to deprive myself some of the comforts of life now for a future that feels like it could be ripped away from me at any moment, she said. I mean, nihilism as a philosophy and outlook on life is sort of, I don't know, you kind of have to be a little bit nihilistic to make it through the day or make it through life, because some things are just out of our control, and some things we have to look at in a pessimistic way. And unfortunately, when we see that the wages stay low, the inflation keeps rising, but the cost of living keeps rising as well, and that sort of thing, I mean, you kind of just have to say, well, fuck it. I guess I just got to live the best life I can, right? Because we grew up so privileged with our parents, buying the homes, buying 2-3 cars, taking us on vacations and trips. And then we're out in the world, and some of us have kids or families. We're not just going to deprive ourselves, and say we're not going to do it. We grew up used to that, so we can't go back to anything else. That's what it feels like for my generation. In her stand-up act, Miss Jones, 27, has a reliable joke. No, I'm not saving for retirement. I'm going to spend my money now while we still have a supply chain at all. It's kind of a issue joke. It's a quip that changes with the headlines. On some nights, instead of supply chain, she simply plugs in the catastrophe du jour. Okay. I guess. Not my cup of tea when it comes to comedy. The anti-frugal mood is pervasive. Hannah Fuller, 25, said she was once enthusiastic about saving for the future. After having taken financial aid while attending a private high school and college, she was assiduous about managing her money, making sure to max out her Roth IRA each year. If I remember right, you can put $5,000 each year into your Roth IRA. Let me check. I use Stash. If anybody knows the Stash app, that's when I first even learned about a Roth IRA. And I've tried several times to stack my Roth IRA, but it never goes up. It can never stay up. I'm sure I'm making it much harder for myself than it needs to be. Where's the part where I can check how much? Yeah. So for your Roth IRA, you can put in $6,000 every year. All right. Anyway, but now she said her mindset has shifted. It started when she was living in Portland, Oregon, where she grew up during the wildfires of 2020. Being surrounded by the smoke, you could just really feel the doom and gloom, said Miss Fuller, who works for the Farmers Market Coalition, a nonprofit in Washington. It felt like we were living in The Martian, like we were living in an airlock, trying to keep the smoke out of our apartment. Going to these places you visited as a child and seeing them burn to the ground, it makes wanting to build new things very hard, she continued. Now Miss Fuller has broken her old habit of ordering the cheapest item on a menu. She even booked tickets to a summer music festival in Barcelona. And given the explosion of the housing market, she has decided that saving to buy a home is not something she is going to worry about right now. Yeah, it's like once we get our money, once we get the good job, it's like the price of the housing goes up. So it's just like, well, fuck it. I guess I'll just go to, you know, Cancun. Houses are just so unaffordable, she said. I don't even know if that's worth my time and energy at all. I think also our generation is very, like, I don't know how to say it's precautious or nervous about making these large financial commitments because a lot of us got those student loans, didn't understand them when we were signing it away to Navient and Sally Mae. And I think also, we've been educated and know that a lot of this stuff is a game and a trap. Who wants that 30-year mortgage where you're tied down to this house when you might want to move or relocate, especially with a lot of us doing online work, right? Danilo Jimenez has concluded that it's better to spend like you're living for today. All right. Khalud Eid for the New York Times. Hanging out in a tree. All right. Some experts say the spend it now attitude is not particular to the young people of 2022. Every generation has had an apocalyptic view of their lives, said Brad Klontz, a financial psychologist in Boulder, Colorado. During the Great Depression, he noted many people lost their trust in banks. At the height of the Cold War, the fear of a nuclear war affected the many young people planned for the future, the way many young people planned for the future. I knew it. See, I didn't even read this article in advance, but I'm sure there were some nihilists, some extreme nihilists in the Cold War era. Some people who didn't give a fuck about the future. Life had no meaning, all that, because literally every day you're living under the threat that the bomb could drop. So, if they could make it, we can make it. Millennials, let's not give up. All right. And during the 2008 financial crisis, saving for a home felt pointless for many. We're not wired to save, Mr. Klontz said. We're wired to consume. If you have an exciting vision of the future, those are the people who aggressively save for retirement. If you have an apocalyptic vision of the future, why would you save for it? Of course you wouldn't. The dim view of what's to come can be exacerbated by issues like climate change. Danilo Jimenez, who is planning to go to graduate school to study environmental policy in the fall, said he has put saving for retirement on hold in favor of spending that money on weekend trips and moving out of his parents' home to live with roommates in Brooklyn. All right. The idea that I'm going to put money away into an account that I can't access until I'm 60, that's 2056, said Mr. Jimenez, 25, who has worked as a youth soccer coach and carpenter's helper. A lot of things are going to change by then with respect to climate change. Yeah, I don't think that the pessimism and apocalypticism that we might have about the world ending because the ice caps are melting and stuff like that. Yes, the environment is something that we should care about. We should be worried about the effects of climate change. But many of us living in these first world countries are going to be the ones least affected. Okay, we're the ones who are in the safest place, and we're the ones who probably should be saving and preparing for those doomsday things because, yes, we're not going to be all underwater. They're not going to let New York, Miami, San Francisco, LA go underwater, right? As best as they can, but the people in the Seychelles, the Marshall Islands, Hawaii, many, they predict that, I read this somewhere, or at least I heard this on the news, like Democracy Now, that the people who will be most affected by environmental climate catastrophe and disaster are the people who live on islands in the Pacific, people near the Sahel region, which is near the Sahara, right? People who already are living in places where water is scarce and food is scarce. Those places will become more dry. I can't imagine that this guy, Mr. Jimenez in New York, is going to be, fighting people over packets of bread and bottles of water come 2056. You're going to be fine, Mr. Jimenez. So please stack in your Roth IRA. Please save for your future. Rather than putting his pay into a traditional savings account, Scholier Wagner, hold hold on. Julia Wagner, 25, has been pouring his time and money into an idiosyncratic investment, coral farming. For Mr. Wagner, a financial analyst in Temple, Arizona, aquaculture was a childhood hobby that he gave up in his college years. Large tanks don't exactly fit in dorms. This is a cool hobby, and I wish him the best. I hope the success comes to him. After graduation, he pursued it again. Now he tends to Goniopora, also known as flower pot coral, Euphilia, which can be very expensive, Mr. Wagner said, and Ancantophilia, a massive single polyp coral that can be as large as a pizza, among other types of coral. Mr. Wagner has 7 tanks in his condo with a total volume of over 450 gallons. He buys and trades the chunks with other hobbyists in Arizona, as well as reef specialty stores and aquatic pet shops. Mr. Wagner said he spends $750 to $1,500 on materials and equipment each month. He hopes that one day his expensive hobby will pay off and he can pursue aquaculture as a full-time job. I hope it does too. Last night I watched a video about the history of KFC and the biography of the Colonel Sanders, right? Briefly, to summarize, this guy started KFC when he was 65. Now it's one of the biggest chains in the world. And he lived a very colorful life. And I think a lot of us believe that when we hit certain ages that we remember our parents or our grandparents being, that we will be like them, that we will be old. And yes, oldness and maturity is something that, will slow us down, will make our health different, our bodies will change. But, I remember my mom being like, not 31, but like in her 30s. I remember when my mom was in her 30s, and I thought, wow, when I'm in my 30s, I'm going to be such a old person, a grown person. And here I am now at 31, and I generally feel the same way I feel about myself when I was like 25, 24. I still genuinely feel like a young person, and I support anybody who wants to try to open a business, be entrepreneurial, do that. So, pursue that with passion, but we should also be playing it pragmatic as well. And a lot of us, want to take trips and stuff like that when we should be saving. And I know I'm literally traveling the world right now. I'm about to hop on a plane right now to go to another city in Turkey called Marmaris in a few hours, but I still do my best to try to save for the future and invest. And I hope this nihilism doesn't take root with all of us. Rather than just trying to save to compete with inflation or buy a house in 5 years, which doesn't make sense to me right now, I want to pursue this passion, he said. There's so much uncertainty in the world, and COVID has pushed passions to the forefront. A version of this article appears in print on May 15th, 2022, and the New York edition with the headline, "Save Money, Not Now," they say. All right, so I'll end with this for this video. Thank you for watching. I do support anybody who's pursuing a passion or, wants to live their life however they see fit, whether you want to live for today or live for tomorrow or live for 60 years in the future. Go for it. I just really hope that people are not just following what they see on social media, trying to be like the people they see on Instagram. And also, you're just trying to make sure that one day, if you have kids, if you have a wife, if you have a husband, whatever, that you're financially prepared to accept those responsibilities. Because a lot of these people might be trying to start a coral reef farm, and then he meets a nice girl. Next thing you know, she's pregnant, and then what do they have to build with? But inshallah, everything works out fine. And hopefully everything works out fine for me too in my financial future. Like I've told before in my video about teaching English online, the benefits and negatives of it. The benefit is you get freedom to do many things that people will never do. The bad side is that, unfortunately, you make very, very little money in comparison to the average U.S. salary. So hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment, share this video. My name is Simon Hill. Peace.